I was writing it and wanting to check those things off the list, thinking that if I did those things, then I would feel good about myself or feel validated or be good enough or something. And it was after that night, the first thing I did the next day was I ripped up that list. Like, it didn't mean anything to me anymore, because it was like, I don't even actually want to do these things. Like, these are just things that I think the world would look at me and say, oh, that's really cool. Or, you know, Christine's a good person for doing these things. And it just all of a sudden, like, that competitive nature in me that I had always had, it was like, it's not who you are.
At Active Life, we believe that the healthcare clinic of the future is the gym.
Everybody starts with the best case scenario in mind.
Never sell anything to anybody who is not in the market for what you have.
The only reason we work out is to create the opportunity to recover.
And the healthcare provider of the future is the coach.
And this is why you guys need to get paid well, because what you're doing is really, really hard work.
Christine Kolenbrander, welcome to the Active Life podcast.
Thank you.
It's been too long, by the way. Kim is retired. I don't know if you know this, but Kim, my wife, is retiring in June this month.
No way.
Yes.
What?
Yes. So we'll have more freedom to travel as well. Of course, the summer's all shot already, but we'll have more freedom to travel. So we
going to come to Springfield, Missouri?
Why do you say it like that? Why are you laughing? You told me that we probably should just meet somewhere else.
Oh, you guys are just such New York people, but Springfield, Missouri is probably very different than where you live.
We have a lot of traveling to do. Like we want to see stuff.
Yeah. The groceries are so much less expensive where we're at, though.
That's good. That's good. So I want to get right into it.
Okay.
For people who don't know, you recently performed at the Mid-Atlantic CrossFit Challenge, which is a qualifying event for the CrossFit Games. And the first event was a 1-rep max snatch.
Yeah.
You were the strongest woman of all of the really strong women who were at the event.
Yeah.
You outsnatched Tia Toomey. You outsnatched Brooke Wells. You outsnatched a bunch of Amanda Barnhart, a bunch of really strong women whose names I don't know. You also outsnatched.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like to be, I'm the strongest woman on this floor?
It was pretty cool. It was it was a really cool experience. I think going into the event, actually when I saw the event announced, I was like, I think I could win this. But then when you have that thought, it adds this whole other level of pressure of like, I know I could probably win this, but now I have to do it. And actually going into the event, I thought it was structured differently. I thought it was going to be the way they worded it. I thought it was going to be, you have 3 20-second windows to hit a lift and it's your combined weight. So that kind of added even more pressure. And then when we got to the briefing, they were like, nope, it's just the 1-rep max snatch. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, this is awesome. So it almost like took a little bit of pressure off. Like, we're just going to have fun with this. My lifts felt really good in the back. And then it was just kind of like, we're just going to see what happens. That first lift is always a little nerve wracking, just like get a lift on the board, you know, and we had 3 lifts to do it. And it was just like the first one hit and I knew, like, I was like, it's going to be a good snatch day. Like,
everybody knew.
Yeah,
Everybody watching knew. I was like, why did she start with that weight? It looks like a baby rattle.
And it was 185. Like, it was not a lightweight, you know? Yeah. So when I hit that one, I was like, okay. And then it was kind of like, okay, that second weight. And I knew Tia and Amanda and Brooke would be kind of the heavier lifters. And I was lifting before them because it was seated based on coming into the event. So like on paper, you would kind of think that I'm in the less fortunate situation because I have to go first. But it kind of wound up being cool because it was like I would hit a lift and then watch them, especially Tia, kind of like look over at Shane. Okay, she hit this. What should I do? And put more weight on the bar and then go for it. So it was almost like I would hit my lift and then kind of step back and be like, okay, what are you going to do? You know, like just the competitive nature in me loved that. And it just, everything went very smooth. But I would say that like snatches are something I am very consistent with. So like there was confidence going into it, but it was, you know, after hitting that first lift, I was like, okay, let's do this.
Well, you snatched 205 at the CrossFit Games with like a broken wrist?
Yeah. Yep. In 2018. So
yeah. Yeah. So I'd say consistency is there.
Yes, for sure. But that was only the second time ever that I've hit 210. So that was a confidence booster too, of like, I hit 210, I think in 2018. So like 3 years ago, and I've tried it a million times since and missed it every single time. So I don't know if you heard this story, but I accidentally loaded the bar wrong. Did you see all that?
I saw it, but I didn't read into it too much.
Yeah. So my plan was 185, and then depending how it felt, either 195 or 200 for my second lift. It felt really good. And when I went to go put 195 on, there was just a voice in my head that was like, no, like you need to put 200 on. So put 200 on, hit that. And then I'm like, okay, I knew that some other girls had already hit 200. I didn't know that anyone had hit 205 in previous heats. There had been one girl though. So because I've missed 210 a million times, I was going to put 205 on the bar. So I put on what I thought was 205, and then I'm kind of waiting my turn. And then I'm like adding the weights up, and I'm like, oh, I put 210 on the bar. Whoops. So then I'm like talking to my judge, and I'm like, I think I have 210 on the bar, and we're adding it up. And I'm like, yeah, that's 210. And he's like, okay, well, do you want to take it off? And I was like, no, I don't. I looked up at Jared like 210, and he was like, yeah, do it.
That's exactly what he would say.
Yes, for sure. But that little bit of like, you know, I checked into myself. I kind of prayed about it, looked up at Jared, and it was just kind of almost like 3 confirmations of like, but if I wouldn't have put that on the bar on accident, I don't think that I would have done it.
Right. Well, some things happen by accident and they work out.
Yes. So that was very cool. Then just that feeling of like I was the strongest one out there was just really cool, because I know that especially in previous strength events, like Tia and Amanda have kind of battled it out. And it was just cool to kind of just like be there, right there with them, you know, and then win the event too.
Well, I think that people who don't know you as well might be like, where she came out of nowhere. And yeah, that's not true. It's just, they haven't seen it. Right, because you haven't been highlighted as a singular person. If they watched the games in 2018, they would have seen it and they would have been like, oh, that's the same girl from back then. Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't surprising to me at all. I actually thought when you went for 210, I was like, wow, I'm surprised she's not going for 215 or 220 based on how the last one looked. Yeah. But you mentioned a few times there that your competitive nature kicked in and you preyed on it. So I'm familiar with one of those. Personally, I'm not very familiar with the other. I'm very familiar with being extremely competitive. I'm not familiar with the prayer. So I want to start with the competitive and then we'll get to the faith. Okay. When is the first time in your life that you remember being like, oh yeah, no, winning is extremely important to me, even if it's checkers?
Actually, I was like that with checkers with my dad. But as a kid, so my older sister is 4 years older than me. And I would say that was kind of, I don't know if it was necessarily like, I want to beat my older sister, but it was like, I can do what she can do kind of thing. Like I learned to ride a bike without training wheels when I was 2 because my sister was doing it when she was 6. And I'm like, I want to hang out with Stephanie, you know? So like, there was just, I would say that's probably my earliest memory of like.
I'm laughing because I have 2 4 6-year-olds at home. You know this. And none of them are riding 2 wheels yet.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about that now, I'm like, that's really impressive.
Yes.
So I think there are a lot of things like that like my parents kind of picked up on. And I'm adopted. So like, I think they were like, she has very different genes than the rest of the family.
Is Stephanie your biological sister?
No, I actually don't. Well, I have some biological siblings that I don't know, but within my family that I was raised, no biological siblings.
Okay.
So,
and is Stephanie their biological daughter?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So it was like, and she's amazing but just very different genetics. Mm-hmm. But I can remember my parents having conversations when I was really young, like when I was 2 or 3 years old. And I don't know how I remember those, but I remember one time hearing my parents talking in the other room, and they were like, her legs are so strong. And I walked out and I said, this is a total lie. I said, it's because I do push-ups every single night before bed. Like, I remember saying that to them, and they were like, that doesn't make any sense. Those are your arms.
Right. Were you doing push-ups at 3 years old?
Out of that.
Were you doing push-ups at 3 years old?
Well, yeah, I guess, because I remember going back into the room and I was like, see, watch, I'll do some push-ups.
At 3?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Do you think any of the competitiveness that you talk about comes from being adopted, or do you think that that's all it was in you?
I think it's just in me. Yeah, because as a kid, I knew I was adopted, but I always felt so loved by my family. Like, it was never like I'm adopted, so I have to prove that I'm one of them or better than them or anything like that.
Well, it's great that you had that kind of support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did they instill the faith in you?
Yeah, definitely. And then so I was raised in a Christian home, but then kind of found my own faith still within Christianity, but it became way more real as an adult, which I think we all kind of experienced that, like after we get out of our parents' homes, like just kind of deciding what we actually believe outside of what our parents told us to believe, you know?
I think not as much as you might think. I think that there's a lot of maturity to your ability to recognize, okay, I'm not living at home anymore. What are my beliefs?
Yeah. Whether it's like religion, politics, anything, you know? Mm-hmm. But you're right. There's a lot of people that just do exactly what they were raised in.
Well, I have a theory that most people stop developing around the age of 16.
16?
Yes. Mentally and emotionally, like they've created their beliefs and they're not interested in changing them. I believe that there's a lot of, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old, 16-year-olds walking around.
Yeah. I would say college shapes a lot of people though, too. Don't you think?
No, that's why I said 16.
No. Yeah. I think I've personally seen like so many of my friends that were like a certain way and then they go to college and then they're very different. But
I think it's possible. I mean, for me personally, if it wasn't for some, I don't want to say intervention because it's the wrong word, coaching. If I hadn't gotten coaching, I would still be living with some of the beliefs that I evolved on my own. My parents didn't force me to believe anything. They put things in front of me. They told me what they valued, and I just chose to value all of the same things for a long period of time. It wasn't, and beliefs about myself came from those values.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got some coaching that was like, why don't you look at your beliefs and your values and decide which of them you like and which of them you don't.
Right.
So I think I think you did that really well. You did that younger.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And how I always find faith to be such an interesting thing. It's fascinating for me because it's not something that I share with you. It's something that I, in some ways, admire, you know, your ability to be unshakable in that, in the respite that you have, and like, well, you know what, this is what was intended. And I prayed on it. And on the other side, I asked myself, how much free will is there? And so, so where did the faith really come from for you? What kind of knocked it home where you said, I'm going to own this. This is my thing?
Yeah. So I think like by nature, I was a pretty good kid. Like it wasn't hard for me to like follow the rules and like be a favorite with teachers or coaches or whatever. I got good grades, did well in sports. Like it wasn't until, you know, I got out of high school and then started like, you know, just the typical, like was in a relationship. My boyfriend did on me, broke up with me. I thought my world was ending. Like all of a sudden became like very insecure about a lot of things that I didn't necessarily, I don't know. I probably had those insecurities younger on, but when you go out into the real world, you're like, oh. So then kind of just started like searching for security in the wrong places for a little while and didn't have like a good friend group. And I wouldn't even necessarily say that I was like a bad person, but was just like, I was trying to do it on my own and out of like my own power and my own, like, I'm going to figure this out, or like, and kind of operating out of my own insecurities too, you know? And it just became like very lonely, I guess. And I kind of just got to a point, I was going to bed one night and like, I didn't like being by myself. Like I had to have people around me all the time. And like, if you know me now, that's not how I am. Like I'm very secure, just like chilling in a room by myself. But back then it was like, I had to have something on the calendar to go do, you know, I wasn't comfortable with just like who I was. I needed that like external validation, I guess. So I was going to bed one night and just honestly felt, I have no other way to describe it, but I felt God just kind of say like, I'm right here, you know, and I broke down, and there were some things that I had done that I wasn't necessarily proud of and knew I needed to just talk to someone about those things. And so that night I sent an old friend a text just saying like, I need to talk to someone tomorrow. And we met up and I just shared kind of like things I was going through, things that I was struggling with. And I'm just so thankful that she was the person that I talked to, because it was like, she didn't put like any shame on me or anything. She just explained God's love and his forgiveness and how he has a plan for me and how he created me with purpose, and that what his forgiveness is, what his grace is. And I just felt this, like, I have no other way to describe it, but just love, like pure love wash over me and like fill those spots of insecurity that I was looking for. I was looking to fill that void inside of me with all these external things, but that finally filled it that night. And it was really interesting. Like, that was a very like pivotal day in my life. Like the next day I was different. And it's really hard to even explain it because it was more like a feeling. But the interesting part about it was leading up to that. Like I said, I was like filling my days with things, but also with like goals and ambitions. Like I had a list in my room of like all of these crazy like goals and ambitions that I wanted to achieve. And not that they were bad, but I was writing it and wanting to check those things off the list, thinking that if I did those things, then I would feel good about myself or feel validated or be good enough or something. And it was after that night, the first thing I did the next day was I ripped up that list. Like, it didn't mean anything to me anymore, because it was like, I don't even actually want to do these things. Like, these are just things that I think the world would look at me and say, oh, that's really cool. Or, you know, Christine's a good person for doing these things. And it's just all of a sudden, like, that competitive nature in me that I had always had, it was like, it's not who you are, I guess. Like, and there was a period of time where I didn't really like have a desire to be competitive. And I think that was a healing stage for me, of like learning that I don't have to do those things to still be enough, I guess, or to still be loved. Like, that's not how I get validation. But then eventually I feel like God brought me full circle and was like, but I did put these things inside of you because that's how I created you. It's not who you are, but it's what you get to do. And you can bring other people and show other people this in the process. Well, so it like kind of came full circle.
It sounds almost like it was an unhealthy pursuit of all these false peaks so that other people would be able to say, look at what Christine did. She's great. And then you would be able to identify with those things. And God, some force brought back to you when you achieved the emotional maturity that no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be great at it. And it's going to be for me. And it's not going to be so that you can think that I'm great. It's going to be because I want to think that I'm great. I want to express myself to the best version that I possibly can. And we'll see where that all ends up.
Yeah. Or like that we were all created. Like, I truly believe that we were all created with like gifts and talents and passions and purposes. They shouldn't be your identity, but they should be like an extension of who you are. And that's how you add value to this world.
Well, one of the things that I have so much respect for you for, and I we don't see each other often. We speak from time to time, and I consider you a good friend. And one of the things that I admire most about you is your ability to have so much faith in yourself, in other people who are around you, in your faith, and simultaneously respect other people's decisions to see the world in a different way than you do. And I've never seen you try to convince somebody to see things the way that you see things. I've never seen you do anything that's detrimental to anybody who doesn't believe the way that you do. And I think that you're a great example for people to look to as someone who is at the top level of what you do, who strongly has very strong beliefs in who she is, what she's put on this earth to do, and potentially what each of us are capable of. And that you never impress that upon anybody. You allow people to step into it if they choose. I think that's extremely admirable.
Thank you. I would say that's like, that's something that is very important to me. Like, I've had other Christians tell me before, like, you know, if you sense that someone, you know, might be heading toward that journey, you need to pray this specific prayer with these specific words immediately. And I was always like, what? Like, that's not how God met me. Like, God met me in my bedroom while I was going to bed one night and wrapped me in his love. Like, so to me, like, that's the power of God, and that same power, like, that's God's work. And like, God can use me, but I'm not God, if that makes sense.
Totally. It totally does.
But I also always want to be a safe place for somebody to be able to come and ask questions or not ask questions, you know, or share what they believe. Like, I think we should be always open to hearing and listening.
Well, and I think that you are that. I mean, we've sat on the couch in my house and talked about things that you believe strongly in that I don't believe in. And you were totally welcoming to my questions, to my thoughts. And there was zero sense of pressure or judgment or anything for having questions and seeing things differently.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I think that like one of like a red light, like there's a lot of people, and I'm not shaming anyone, but it's like when anyone tries to act like they have everything figured out about everything, that's like a red light to me, because it's like, how are you so sure? Like, I don't know, you know, like, I don't know.
No, I get, and I think that's the value of questions, and it's the value of openness for people to ask you those questions.
Yeah.
So, you know, not to drag it too far back, but I remember last summer, I recently had somebody on who was a diversity recruiter for IBM. And because I wanted to ask questions that felt what's the word? You weren't allowed to ask. That felt like it was like, if you ask this out loud in public, you're dead, you're gone. And so I brought somebody on for the expressed purpose of being able to say, I know if I have these questions, other people have these questions.
Right.
And if I can't ask these questions, I'm forced to assume the answers. Mm-hmm. And so she was, what's the word? I don't know, kind enough to come on and provide me the space to ask those questions and put them in a public forum. Yeah. So I always have admiration for people who are down to do that kind of stuff. I want to shift a little bit. Yeah. Okay. You recently competing in this high level event. Mm-hmm. You, for all intents and purposes, to anybody watching from the outside, if they made a movie about it, missed out on the CrossFit Games by like 0.2 seconds.
0.1 second.
0.1 second. Obviously, when that happens, I imagine that you go back home or you get in the car and relive every microsecond of every part of every event. Could I have shaved 2 seconds here, which would have placed me higher in this event, and then that 0.2 second doesn't matter?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What's that?
It's like
it's your what?
It's like mental warfare.
How long did you do that with yourself for?
So the event got done Sunday. I really struggled with it. I think Sunday night when I was going to bed and just closing my eyes and just kind of like going over like you said, every single event, every detail. I think I even looked over at Jared and I was like, I'm just so pissed right now. And I had a pretty good attitude all day until I kind of like quieted down and my mind started going. And he was like, about what? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, just everything. And I started naming off things and he was just quiet. Like he didn't join in with my getting upset.
Well, it's probably good. He
he kind of just let me vent. And then he actually prayed about the situation because I could tell like he was holding in just the same questions, like, you know, why, just the why and like the same kind of thing. If you would have done this, if you would have done this, and not mad at me by any means, but just like,
right, what are the opportunities we missed?
Well, yeah. So we prayed about it and then, I went to bed and I was still kind of thinking about stuff, but really the next day I was able to kind of like turn stuff around, and through writing really helps me like process things. So, and I try to be like, I don't share every detail of my life on Instagram, but I try to be pretty open with people just about like what I'm going through and kind of my process of getting from maybe an unhealthy way of thinking about something to a healthy way of thinking about it. Just because I feel like if we share what we're going through, maybe someone else is going through something similar and maybe they can relate. So I feel like the next day kind of processing that and like writing really helped me like get back in a good mindset about things, but it still will come up. Like I'll still start thinking about little things here and there, but
I'm sure.
Yeah.
This might sound like a ridiculous question, but I know other people who are listening to this are thinking it also, and they don't know what it is. They just assume they know what it is. How do you pray about that? Like, what do you do? Do you sit down and like ask God what happened there? I really don't understand what it means to pray about that.
Mostly like praying for peace. And so I feel like God's peace is it's like nothing that you can understand. Like it's not from this world. I feel like it's like just this, everything's going to be okay. And it just kind of like washes over you. So praying for that, like praying for peace of mind and just for me to have a good heart and everything, for wisdom, for, you know, like what the plan is from here, for the ability for me to trust that his will and plan is being walked out in my life because I am asking to be part of that. So just trusting that this is the right path, and more so like for the ability and strength to be able to accept it and to have that peace and to have a good attitude walking forward and to still continue to be a light even in the midst of being disappointed about something.
Well, I saw that somebody asked you a question that both you and the person who finished one spot ahead of you said that you'd prayed on the event and they got it. And you mentioned that prayer isn't a wishing well.
Right.
And so what that said to me is that you weren't praying to win the event. You were praying for something else. What was it?
For God's will to be done. Like for his greater plan to be executed.
Which means, go ahead.
I guess the way that I believe it is that I'm just an instrument being used in his greater plan, but ultimately I believe God is good. So like even in a disappointment, he's going to turn that into something that I can't see right now, but it will be worked together for good. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that doesn't mean like, well, I'm like, I want to go to the CrossFit Games, but maybe his version of good is teaching me something that I wouldn't have learned if I just qualified to the CrossFit Games.
Sure. There's a million ways to look at it. You know, it could be something as simple as that weekend something is going to happen. If you don't get there through the last chance qualifier, that weekend something, you might meet somebody somewhere who 5 years from now is going to see you on. You never know.
Exactly.
And I think that I can relate to that kind of thought, even though for me, it wouldn't be a prayer to God. Mm-hmm. It would be more of a, let the work that's been done represent the work that's been done.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what the next level of work needs to be. And let me have peace with the outcome. Even if I don't like the outcome, even if I love the outcome, please don't let me get too high. Please don't let me get too low.
Yeah.
So all of those. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're a specifically gifted athlete. You know, your gymnastics background, your strength, your just resolve, you know, your stoicism when you step out to do things that even for you at that high level are difficult. Mm-hmm. Do you see yourself continuing to pursue being a high level competitive CrossFit Games athlete for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Is that something that you see in your future?
So I feel like we've talked about this before. I think you asked me my 5-year plan one time and I was like, blah. Because every time I've ever tried to make a 5-year plan while committing to living within God's plan and God's will, he always wrecks my world. So it's like my kind of thought on like plans and like where I see myself going is like, I can only handle like the next step. Like right now it's like, I know I'm called to go do that last chance qualifier. And then like, I'll make the next decision from there. Like I love being a CrossFit athlete, Like I truly love it. But back to like the beginning of this whole story, and when I kind of, ripped up that list, because those things don't define me. Like it's the same thing now. It's like being a CrossFit Games athlete is not who I am. It's what I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. And if I'm called to do something else, I will lay this down and go do that.
Sure. I totally understand that. The reason I ask is it's such a hard thing to do. And the gains that you need to make are so small, and you don't even necessarily know what they are. You have an idea, but you could work on something for a whole year, mm-hmm. improve on it, and then not get it tested. Yeah.
Or get sick right before competition.
Yes.
Not sleep the night before, or, there's such a small window mm-hmm. of opportunity that it has to be more than just making it to CrossFit Games, in my opinion. Like there has to be relationships outside of that are important. There has to be a bigger reason for doing it other than just going to the CrossFit Games for me.
I like that. So when I talk about a 5-year plan and I talk to you about it, I want to clarify something. The reason that I look at things in 5-year plans, and I'm going to put plans in quotes, is because personally, the comfort that it gives me is it provides me with an opportunity to audit whether that's the plan I still want to be on at any given time. So for example, 5 years from now, I would like the people who we educate at Active Life, the coaches and the gym owners, to be able to bill health insurance directly to service people who need physical fitness as their healthcare modality. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I think most people need, and they're not getting it right now. So in 5 years, I want people who have been educated by us to be able to bill health insurance, because health insurance will deem that what Active Life is doing is not only necessary, it is the most necessary thing that we have in the market right now.
Yeah.
In 5 years, I want to be thought of as an institution where mm-hmm. that kind of stuff is where the place to come to learn how to be a professional. I want to, in 5 years, have kids who still love mm-hmm. me and who still love each other and their mom. Yeah. I want to have my health. These are things in 5 years that I want to be able to have. And some of them have numbers to them and some of them don't.
Yeah.
The reason I said that is I get to wake up in the morning and ask myself, this is the path you were pursuing yesterday. Mm-hmm. Is it still the path that you want to pursue today? And decide every day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I lost you there for a second. We had a little bit of an internet drop off.
Yeah. Elusive. Bye. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're good now.
Okay. I said, I guess that I do have like elusive 5-year plans. Like, I guess I have a continuous goal to become like more and more self-sustainable. Like Jared and I together, like having land, we have plans for the gym, like different things like that. And maybe it's just a weird thing that I feel like I've gotten better at it, but I think it was like a triggering thing for me for a little bit of just like, I don't know.
Oh, I get it. I don't want to think about 5 years. I'm working on something right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
But I think just growing up, I think I'm learning a little bit more. That is a fair question to ask.
Well, I talked to some business bankers yesterday because we're thinking about making some big moves with the company. And one of the things they said is, could you send us a business plan? I said, mm-hmm. but I could just send you a roll of toilet paper. That would be just as good.
Yeah.
And I said that to them. And they laughed and they're like, what do you mean? And I said, how many people who sent you a business plan in the last 20 years have actually had a business that matched the plan 20 years later?
Yeah. How often does that actually happen?
Right. And they laughed. I said, look, what I can do is I can send you anything that you want that will get you to say yes to me for the thing that I'm asking you for. Yeah. So why don't you tell me what you want and I'll send that. And it was a refreshing, open conversation with a bunch of otherwise would-be stuffy bankers who were just like, you make a good point. You make a good point. So,
right.
So I have a question for you. Do you remember what was on that list that you tore up?
It was so silly, Sean. Like, it was like run a marathon.
Well, hold on. You think it's silly right now because you're looking back at it. I promise you, somebody listening to this is going to have a similar list, and somebody listening to this is going to have that list, and they're going to audit it, and they're going to say, "Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for other people?"
Yeah, and I guess I'm not saying. Hear me. I'm not saying like if you want to run a marathon that's silly. That's not what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. It's just if you know me, I'm not a runner. That is not something that I would choose to do. Like it was something that I thought was like, oh, I could put that little sticker on the back of my car, you know? So things like that, like, I think there was like do a bodybuilding show, like things that like I hadn't even, I don't know, like I just came up with all these fitness goals. I was currently working on the run a marathon, which I didn't do. But
you didn't? You haven't run no 26.2 on the back of the car?
I got like 17 miles.
Did you say you ran 17 miles?
Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you say you ran? Did you say you ran 17 miles?
Say that again.
Did you say that you ran 17 miles?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't even know if I could do that now. I think I could. It would just hurt really bad.
Nothing that you're not capable of tolerating should you want to.
Yeah.
If somebody said to me, name 5 people who can endure pain for something greater than the pain, you would be on that list.
That's a compliment.
It's the truth. It's, you know, I've wanted to have you on the podcast for a while now, and I haven't had, I guess I probably could always have asked, but I haven't had a real spark of something specific that I wanted to talk to you about, except that I like you. I consider you a friend. I think you're interesting. I think you're impressive. And I was talking to Sean Cleary the other day about people we want to have on the show, and he mentioned you. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask her. I don't need this like miracle spark, but there are so many things about you that are impressive to me. Your ability to endure physical, mental, emotional pain in pursuit of something that is worth going through the pain to deal with is just another one of them. So another thing that I've noticed about you that I admire that I want you to talk about is how loyal I notice that you always are to the people around you. The examples that I've seen of that, to give you some context, are when you were on Team 417, I was clear with Jared. I'm like, Christine's the glue. Like she's the one who holds everything together. And because everybody feels comfortable, they can come to Christine and talk to her about it. Earlier than that, when I met you at the CrossFit Games the first time, I don't even know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do. You're eating chips and guacamole without a shirt on, working on everyone.
Jacked, obviously. You know, it was, you were coming over to me because someone else who you knew at the time needed help.
Yeah.
And I've just seen you over and over and over again stand by people's side. And that's admirable. Where does that come from? The reason I ask is loyalty's hard, because even the people who you support can not support you back in a moment and then support you later on. And you have a way of keeping your door open to people.
Yeah.
Always.
You know what? That's something that I've like been trying to figure out where that comes from lately, because there's been several situations in my life where like it would make, like, you know, whether it's at a gymnastics gym and it would make more sense to go to the competitor's gym, or, you know, like something that would probably benefit me more, but because of my loyalty, I would never even think about it. Like, but that happened to me as a child. So it's like, what is that? And I don't know if maybe it comes from adoption, like part of like maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't want to say it's like an abandonment issue, but I just think that like loyalty is super important to me. It's honestly a question I'm like still working through, like why. I know it's important to me, and I know that's a good thing about me, but like, I mean, my parents instilled very good character traits in us, but I don't remember them ever being like, you need to be loyal. Like, that wasn't ever like a conversation that we had. Like, I do think it's something that is instilled in me, maybe just like being taught to do the right thing, and that comes along with loyalty.
Well, so can we stay on it then?
Yeah.
So loyalty is a huge thing for me. And when I say loyalty, I want to be clear to other people what I mean by that. Loyalty doesn't mean you always agree with me. It doesn't mean you always side with me. It doesn't mean that you always tell me that what I did was okay. It doesn't mean that you think I'm the best. It doesn't mean that you work for me forever.
Yeah.
It's none of those things.
Then loyalty.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had moments in my life where friends of mine have made egregious mistakes. Drunk driving.
Yeah.
You know, big fist fights, got arrested, stuff like this. And over and over and over and over again, I would get asked by the community at large, you know, like, are you going to cut ties with that person? No, because I know that person beyond the mistake. I know that the person, that they're not their mistake. Right. I had a friend who I hired who had recently been arrested, spent time in jail, couldn't get a really steady job. We hired him as a coach. And then ultimately he was a really good kid, had turned his entire life around, and made a mistake one night and drank for like the first time in a long time. And like 5 years.
Yeah.
And got in a car accident and then spent the next 5 years in jail. And when he came out, I was still writing him letters in jail. And when he came out, I was happy to help him get his career back started.
Yeah. I think that, it's kind of similar to the, like, what is, you're not what you do, like, you're who you are, and it's what you get to do. Like, I feel like it's kind of the same thing when someone makes a mistake. It's like, that's such a small piece of their whole entire story. And it's like the things I've done in my life where I've screwed up and people have given me grace. I remember those, you know, and it's like, I want to offer that same thing to other people.
How do you decide? And my question about that is, there is, for me at least, I feel an energy when I need to make these kinds of decisions, when I feel burned, or when I feel disrespected, or when I feel just frustrated by a relationship with a person who I want to provide loyalty to. I feel this energy like at the bottom of my esophagus where my throat meets my belly, you know, below my chest. And I'm like, I need to push through that feeling and be there for this person. And I find myself in a decision-making game every time that happens. Do you feel anything similar to that?
I feel like mine's more like, if someone wrongs me, I'll definitely feel the feelings of being upset and angry. But I feel like I can look in people's eyes. Like, I feel like I can see, like, when I am with that person in person and can see their eyes, it's like I can tell if it's coming, if like their hurt is coming from hurt within them. If it's, I don't know, I just feel like I can read their eyes, if that makes sense.
Well, what you're describing sounds like you're making a, for lack of a better word, a judgment call on, is this person acting out this way towards me because they're finding it more difficult not to because of external forces? Or are they acting out this way towards me because they genuinely don't want me to be happy?
Right. Yeah. Like, I think that one of my gifts is like empathy. Like, I think I'm pretty good at putting myself in other people's shoes and just trying to see it through their eyes. And when you do that, I feel like it can bring you full circle of like, and there have been a lot of people that, I wouldn't say a lot of people, there's been a few people in my life where, you know, I still try to be empathetic, but it reaches a point where it's like, this is a toxic relationship and there needs to be boundaries or there needs to be space.
Well, there's empathy and then there's sympathy. And empathy is, I understand how you feel. Mm-hmm. Sympathy is, and I'm here for you to feel that way. You can have one without the other. You know, it can be, I understand how you feel and I just don't have the energy to be your support system through this.
Right. Yeah.
That's
reasonable. And that's something I feel like sometimes my loyalty, that's something I'm learning as I get older, like that, you know, I think when you are an empathetic person, people that are kind of like energy drainers, they can sense that sometimes. Mm-hmm. And they kind of latch on to that. So it's been a learning thing for me to be like, you know, I hear you and I'm sorry. And like, I'm praying for you, but like, I might not be your main person. Like maybe you need to journal or maybe you need to get a counselor or, you know, like learning to say those things or just create those boundaries with those types of people.
Well, the other side of that is people don't come to you.
Yeah.
And I've been more often on that side because it's I have a personality that makes it often seem as though I'm not approachable because I see things very logically and rationally all the time and don't do very well in the emotional places. And so I think that you have a unique opposite attraction than I do, which is why I find the way that you do it so fascinating.
Yeah.
So
and it's good and bad both, you know, like it's for me learning to be a little bit more like you in situations and for you learning to be a little bit more like me in situations.
Yeah. It's meeting people where they want to be met instead of asking them to meet you where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So shifting gears one more time, when you came in to help Jared at CrossFit 417 to be like on staff to actually, I feel like that place just got a huge lift that started with aesthetics and just becomes culture. And I have to be honest, I haven't been there. I haven't taken classes there, but the content that you guys share has shifted. You know, the way that the way that everything comes out of that place is different. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. So there was, and I want to say it's just me. It was like, I had ideas and especially with the aesthetic, like it started with that. But I think that we just recognized that there was a big issue at our gym of like kind of a line drawn between people that were doing class and people that were competing. And both people felt it, like the competitors felt like they weren't connected to the class members and the class members felt like they weren't connected to the competitors. And there was kind of like silent hostility there. So that was like our main like issue and kind of like, how do we bridge that gap? So we started requiring all of our competitive athletes to do at least 2 classes a week, like just the regular classes. And Jared's classes are hard. So it wasn't like, but there was some pushback for sure with that. There were some people that were happy about it. And then there were some people that, you know, didn't want to do the classes and wound up leaving the gym because of it. But ultimately, even though that was sad, it's like, that was the first step, like the class thing, like bridging that gap between the competitors and the class members to creating a culture shift. Another big thing was we had dropped our affiliation. So we wound up changing our name just to Team 417, which we had been kind of referred to that in the past with our team, but it was kind of like almost a symbolic thing too of like, hey, Team 417 isn't just the competitors. it's all of you guys. Like, we are Team 417. So I do think there is like power in words and intention, and like saying that like we're all a team, and then changing our slogan to fitness for everyone. Like, it really became more inclusive. Like, just by changing our name and our slogan, we started getting so many different types of people at our gym that we had never had before. Just starting reaching different demographics, age groups of people that we had never had before, simply by changing the name. So,
well, I think it speaks to Jared's maturity, because it's his baby, to be willing to make those moves. And I think it speaks to the amount of respect that he and other people in that community have for you and your ideas.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really powerful thing for anybody who's listening to this, who owns a gym or goes to a gym or competes, to hear, because you guys are not a gym that develops athletes for local competition. No. Year in and year out, you guys are producing some of the best athletes in the entire CrossFit landscape.
Yeah. When you look at the amount of CrossFit Games athletes that have come out of our gym, it's pretty crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And then you look at the teams on top, there's a lot of really, really high level performers that come out of that gym. And I know personally that they don't all go into that gym high performers. They come out of it that way.
Yeah.
So it's a problem in a lot of gyms. The competitive athletes want their own thing, and then the other members want something else. And I think it's really cool that you said, look, our culture is going to be inclusivity, that the team doesn't exist without the members paying for the gym to exist. So you're going to pay homage to the members, and the members are going to be a part of the team.
Yeah. And I think too, it speaks volumes that like, I still do those 2 or more classes a week. Mm-hmm. And I almost just qualified to the CrossFit Games. Like, it's like, I am doing separate programming outside of that too, but like, you can get really fit going hard with your class. Like, and
you can get really fit and never want to qualify for the CrossFit Games, which means the class is plenty.
Yeah, definitely.
Christine, is there anything I did not ask you about that you would like to share with the audience?
Not necessarily. I guess I would just add that, like, I really do believe that we were all created with purpose and intention, and that like, if something is important to you, or like, if you care about something and you feel that there's a need to put out into the world, like, keep pursuing that, even if it seems silly. Because, you know, after like kind of laying down that competitive side of me, that voice started creeping back up of like, hey, you're an athlete. Like, you're really athletic, you're strong, and those aren't bad things. And at first I was like, man, it's silly. Like, I'm an adult now. Like, I'm done being an athlete. But I chose to listen to that voice inside of me and just keep pursuing it. And it's led to some of the greatest things in my life. This is kind of another little thing, but I'm also super creative, and I've always struggled since getting into the CrossFit area, or the CrossFit life, of like, I feel like I'm not doing enough with that creative side of me, and kept praying about it, and like wound up signing with junk brands and get to design my own headbands. And so like, it's just so cool when you have something inside of you that you believe is important, even if it might seem silly, to keep praying about it, thinking about it, putting out into the world, journaling about it, and just seeing, like, looking back, connecting all those dots and seeing that like those things do matter, and they are making a difference, you know?
I love that. I think that you're a wildly talented person who is maybe only even starting to tap into what your potential is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for the future, for sure.
You should be. Christine, where can people find you?
Mostly on Instagram. Handle is at Christine Cole.
Kole.
Yeah, Kole.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Active Life podcast. If you did, please be sure to head to wherever you listened to it and give us a quality review, as well as 5 stars if you can spare them. If you want more from us, feel free to follow all of our social media accounts at Active Life Professional, Active Life RX, and Dr. Sean Pastuch on Instagram. Remember, at Active Life, we believe that the healthcare clinic of the future is the gym, and the healthcare provider of the future is the coach. We also believe that that future is now. Turn it up.